Racist judge laughs at black teen's tears, but regrets everything after one phone call. He stood there, shaking. A 16-year-old boy named Malik, barely old enough to drive, yet somehow old enough to be treated like a criminal. His hands trembled as he clutched the edge of the defendant's table. His eyes, filled with tears, scanned the courtroom, searching for one kind face, but found none. The judge stared back at him with cold eyes and a mocking grin. "You think those tears are gonna save you?" The judge chuckled as the courtroom fell silent. Then he laughed, as if this boy's future was a joke. Malik's mother sobbed quietly in the back row, helpless, broken, watching her son's world fall apart, all because of something he didn't even do. The sentence was handed down like a death blow. Malik closed his eyes, trying to hold back the pain. But just before he was taken away, they gave him one phone call. Just one. He didn't call a lawyer. He didn't call a friend. He called his brother, and that's when everything changed, because what the judge didn't know was that this boy wasn't alone, and justice was just one phone call away. Before the courtroom, before the cuffs, before the tears, Malik was just a boy, a quiet, respectful teenager growing up on the south side of Chicago. His world was small, just school, home, and the basketball court down the block. But his dreams? They were huge. He wanted to be an engineer. He loved taking apart old radios and putting them back together again. "One day I'll build something that changes lives," he told his mother once. She had smiled, even though her eyes were tired. Malik's mother, Tanya, worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. She cleaned offices at night and worked the register at a corner store during the day. Some nights, Malik would stay up just to heat leftovers for her when she walked in at 11 p.m. exhausted. She always said, "You keep your head down, Malik. Stay good. Stay focused. The world will notice." But the world didn't notice his goodness. It only saw his skin. At school, Malik kept to himself. His teachers said he was quiet but brilliant. One of them even told him he had MIT potential. But things started to shift in sophomore year. A new security officer joined the school, stern, suspicious, and always watching the black kids more closely than anyone else. Malik noticed but never said anything. He wasn't the type to cause trouble. One day, a teacher's phone went missing during class. It was a simple mix-up. The phone had slipped behind the teacher's desk, but no one checked. The officer immediately pointed at Malik. "You were sitting closest," he said. "No questions, no evidence, just an accusation." Malik was stunned. He denied it, tried to explain. But the moment those cuffs touched his wrists, his voice didn't matter anymore. It didn't matter that he had perfect attendance. It didn't matter that he stayed after school helping younger kids with their homework. All that mattered was a false assumption backed by silent systems that had failed boys like him for generations. At the police station, he waited for hours. No one explained what was happening. His mother wasn't allowed to see him. Right away, they told her, just let the system do its job. But deep down, she knew. This system was never made for boys like Malik. When Malik was finally told he'd be standing in front of a judge, he didn't even understand why. "I didn't do anything," he whispered. But no one cared. It wasn't about guilt. It was about control. And Malik? He was just another number to be processed. But what they didn't know, what none of them saw coming, was that Malik wasn't as alone as they thought. Because one phone call would soon shake the very foundation of that courtroom and remind them that truth has a voice. Judge Ronald G. Whitmore had been sitting on that bench for over 20 years. To some, he was known as tough on crime. To others, especially families like Malik's, he was something else, a man with power and no compassion. His robe was crisp, his tone was sharp, and his courtroom, it was his kingdom. And in that kingdom, he had a reputation, especially when it came to sentencing black teens. There were whispers, quiet warnings passed between defense attorneys. "If you draw Whitmore, don't expect mercy." His record was harsh. Minor infractions turned into major punishments. And even when kids showed potential or promise, Judge Whitmore rarely cared. He called them repeat statistics, as if their future had already been written in a police report. When Malik walked into that courtroom, he could feel it. The air was cold, The walls were high, but it was the eyes of the man on the bench that shook him, cold, disconnected. Malik was just another file in a stack, not a boy, not a life, just paperwork. As the prosecutor read the charges, Malik's heart pounded. They made him sound like a thief, a liar, a danger. He wanted to speak, to scream, but when his public defender gave him a quiet shake of the head, he knew. This wasn't his moment to be heard. This was a moment to be sentenced. Then came the moment no one could forget. The judge leaned forward. His eyes narrowed and he looked straight at Malik. "I've seen kids like you all my life, full of tears in the courtroom and full of trouble in the streets." He smirked. "But maybe a few months locked up will teach you what your mother clearly couldn't." The courtroom gasped, soft, uneasy. Malik's mom clutched her chest, her face pale with shock. But the judge? He just chuckled, and then he laughed. Right there in court, in front of a crying teenager and a devastated mother. A man in a black robe laughed. To him, Malik's tears weren't signs of innocence or fear. They were something to mock, something to dismiss. In that moment, Malik didn't just feel defeated, he felt invisible, because the man who held his fate in his hands didn't even believe he was worth listening to. But what Judge Whitmore didn't, no, what he could never have imagined, was that this boy, this quiet teen with tear-stained cheeks, was about to make a single phone call that would expose everything he thought he could hide. Because sometimes, even kings in robes fall. After the sentence was handed down, Malik was led into a holding cell. His hands were cuffed loosely now, but his spirit felt tightly bound. Everything he had tried to build, his grades, his dreams, his future, had been crushed by the gavel of a man who never cared to know him. The guard, without even looking him in the eye, said, "You get one call. Make it quick." Malik stared at the phone on the wall. His fingers hesitated. He could have called his mom. He could have cried to her, begged for comfort, told her he was sorry for something he didn't do. But instead, he called his brother, Jamal. Jamal was 10 years older. The protector, the one who always told Malik to keep receipts, to stay alert, and to speak up when it mattered most. Jamal had once been in a similar place years ago, but he didn't stay there. He climbed out of the system's grip, went to college, and now worked at a civil rights group downtown. Malik knew one thing for certain. Jamal didn't just talk. He acted. The phone rang once, then twice, and then, "Malik, you good?" Malik choked on his own voice. "They laughed at me, bro." The judge laughed. Jamal didn't scream, he didn't panic. He just went silent for a beat, then said, "Okay, don't worry, this isn't over." And with that, the call ended. Malik sat down slowly, staring at the wall. He didn't know what Jamal would do, but he knew his brother. And something in his gut whispered, Judge Whitmore just messed with the wrong family. Because justice may move slowly, but when it starts rolling, it doesn't stop. Jamal wasted no time. Within the hour, he was on his laptop, files open, phone pressed to his ear. He knew the system wouldn't admit its mistake willingly, but he also knew it left behind fingerprints, paper trails, overlooked reports, forgotten footage. And Jamal, he knew how to find them. First, he dug into the case. The stolen phone? It had been found. 3 days before the court date, a janitor had turned it into the school's front office. But the police never updated the file. Why? Because they didn't care to. Jamal contacted the school, demanded access to security camera footage. He threatened to sue if they didn't comply. And when the footage came in, the truth hit like thunder. Malik never touched that phone. In fact, he was on the other side of the room when the teacher dropped it. But that wasn't all. Jamal filed a public records request on Judge Whitmore's conduct. It revealed something sickening. Over 20 formal complaints in the past 10 years, most of them from Black or Latino families, claiming racial bias, verbal abuse, and disproportionately harsh sentences. None of them had gone public, until now. Jamal handed the evidence to a lawyer, and then he did something even more powerful. He gave the footage to the press. The video of Judge Whitmore laughing at Malik hit the internet, and the world watched. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, "On Justice for Malik" was trending across the country. News anchors debated it on morning shows. Celebrities reposted it with messages like, "This is why we fight." Protesters gathered outside the courthouse holding signs that read, "Our kids are not jokes." The court tried to stay quiet, but the noise was too loud. Local reporters uncovered stories of other teens who had faced Judge Whitmore, all with eerily similar outcomes. Parents came forward, lawyers stepped up. Even a retired clerk admitted that they had overheard the judge using racial slurs behind closed doors. The courtroom that once echoed with Whitmore's arrogance now echoed with outrage. Under mounting pressure, the Judicial Oversight Board launched an emergency investigation. Within days, Judge Whitmore was placed on administrative leave. But it didn't stop there. The district attorney's office announced a full review of his past sentencing decisions, starting with Malik's case. Whitmore appeared on camera once, visibly shaken, reading a written apology from a trembling hand. But no words could erase what the world had seen. For the first time in decades, the gavel didn't fall from his hand. It was taken. Malik walked out of the detention center not as a convict, but as a survivor. His name had been cleared. The charges were dropped. And as he stepped onto the courthouse steps, hundreds stood waiting, clapping, cheering, holding signs with his face. His mother ran to him, wrapped him in trembling arms. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her tears said it all. News crews followed him for days, but Malik never let the attention change him. He returned to school, head held high. And this time everyone knew who he was, not as a suspect, but as a symbol. Local colleges reached out with scholarship offers. Malik chose one that had a program in robotics. He still wanted to build things, still wanted to change lives. Only, now he had a new mission too. To speak for the voiceless. To fight for those still trapped in the same system he barely escaped. One boy, one lie, one phone call. That's all it took to expose the truth, and to remind a nation that silence can be broken. Because Malik wasn't just a victim. He became the beginning of something bigger.